doing what we can, where we are, with what we have. Thank you for your interest in our work, and to the conference organisers for giving us this opportunity to learn from each other in spite of the pandemic. I'm Avril Bellinger, a registered English social worker whose practice is in academia and in the NGO sector. I describe myself as an academic activist, founder and chair of Students and Refugees Together, START, international volunteer, and co-author with Deirdre Ford of The Strengths Approach in Practice, How It Changes Lives.
My name is Deirdre Ford. I'm a registered social worker and a trustee of Students and Refugees Together and an associate of Research in Practice, an organisation that ensures that social workers are evidence-informed in their approach. Academics from European universities have issued a challenge to the global university sector demanding a shift from publications to public action in response to the climate and ecological emergency. We agree that business as usual is very dangerous and recognise that it can be hard to find ways to respond. This paper proposes positive action as a response to that challenge. It provides examples of academic activism founded on the Strengths Approach in Uganda and in the southwest of England. The Strengths Approach offers a constructive response to inequity and diversity. It challenges academics to commit to collaboration, sharing, and developing our knowledge for the long-term benefit of the communities we can reach, doing what we can, where we are, with what we have. We begin by interrogating the changing nature of academia, its transition from a public good to an integral part of global capitalism, with concern for income generation and students as customers. The notion of the ivory tower and separation from the real world are ideas inherited from a tradition of privilege and inaccessibility except for the few. The same forces of greed and demand for constant growth that have created a global environmental emergency have reduced academia to a site where knowledge is treated as a commodity, whose primary function is income generation. It is discouraging to see that far from being rarefied spaces where radical ideas are encouraged, universities are very much part of the real world with economic forces dominating. In contrast, the examples we share here are typical of international potential and practice. The climate emergency. The science relating to the climate emergency has long been in the public domain. Likewise, the unequivocal truth that it is man-made can no longer be refuted. We are not arguing that striving for knowledge is unimportant. Indeed, the research undertaken in the United Kingdom at the University of East Anglia by Professor Philip Jones was profoundly important, so important that enormous resources were invested in hacking the university computer system in order to discredit the scientist and his findings. This delayed by decades the opportunity to take action to avert disaster. For many years now, scientists have been warning about the catastrophic results on the climate if the world reaches average temperatures of 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels. According to the World Research Institute, global temperatures have risen by 1.1 degrees centigrade so far, and already we are seeing an increase in natural disasters such as flooding, hurricanes, and other events. The latest IPCC report warns that the world is set to reach 1.5 degrees centigrade point within the next 2 decades, and only the most drastic cuts in carbon emissions from now would help prevent an environmental disaster. Continuing as we are now will mean a 4-degree centigrade rise by the end of the century, an environment unsustainable for human life. The strengths approach. As social workers in academia, we have an enduring commitment to social justice practice that is directed at positive change to enhance the well-being of people and planet. Our work is informed by the strengths approach, which makes a demand for work in all circumstances. The title of this paper, Doing What We Can, Where We Are, with What We Have, we know from our own work that it is an approach that offers possibility and hope. Rooted in the strengths approach, we subscribe to the principles that all situations are seen as rich with resources. Higher education institutions are full of people, not least the students, who want to learn more about the world in order to achieve a better future. The responsibility of staff is to use our resources to create conditions for that learning to happen, not to pass on a version of the truth that will domesticate young people and maintain the status quo. People and communities have capacity for change. Social work is committed to change. As social workers in higher education, we are familiar with the consequences of trying to fit into a hierarchical system where subject areas are clearly defined. As an applied practice discipline, in a system where status is attached to pure subjects, social work has always been in the margins and able to work across boundaries. This agility from a strong values base is core to social work practice in any situation. Everyone's contribution is valued and needed. Responsibility for the imminent threat we are facing cannot be passed to others, whether governments, scientists, industrialists, or environmental activists, those with experience of living with severe hardship of any kind, whether poverty, mental ill health, or environmental degradation, for example, know most about survival and resilience. When knowledge is commodified, as in an acquisitive and extractive construct, we can be directed away from the enormous value of our indigenous knowledge and the potential for growth and regeneration. Difficulties, however severe, can also be a source of resilience and creativity. The climate emergency affects people with the least financial resilience first. As land becomes unproductive through drought or flooding, the number of people displaced by climate change supersedes that of refugees displaced by war, and the number of both continues to grow. As demonstrated throughout this conference, we have much to learn from people who have learned to survive and even thrive in these depleted environments. We cannot know the potential of others and must not place limits on their aspirations. It's clear that we must act quickly to avert human and planetary disaster, and that co-building a new eco-social world needs everyone's participation. In the following two examples, people in refugee camps in rural Uganda and students in southwest England achieve extraordinary results because they are supported and trusted to realise their aspirations. We hope they will inspire you to do whatever you can do with the resources you have.
Our first example of academic activism is creative capacity building. I first encountered it in Uganda when collaborating with Kulika Uganda, an NGO that trains subsistence farmers in environmental organic agriculture through farmer-to-farmer extension. A member of the Kulika team had been trained by Amy Smith, engineer and D-Lab founder, and colleagues as a CCB trainer, and he was an enthusiastic advocate of its value. CCB is an approach to strengthening the innovation capacity of individuals, teams, and local communities that was developed at MIT D-Lab in 2007. Using a design cycle as a framework, a rural community is asked to identify a technological problem, such as the labour-intensive process of hulling groundnuts by hand. The practitioner works with the group to develop a solution using locally available materials and supports everyone's skill development in handling materials, sawing wood, working with metal, etc. As people's skills increase, they're able to design and build a prototype that calls on the ideas and creativity of everyone involved. The design cycle is then used to improve and refine the prototype, thus embedding the process in the community. In 2021, Kulika's interim report on a large-scale funded project in northern Uganda illustrated the powerful outcomes of CCB with recently displaced people throughout the COVID pandemic. This cited 26 different inventions, including a water filter, oven, garden tool sharpener, and wheeled cart, all constructed by people in refugee camps, some of which already supported people's livelihoods, as well as their confidence and self-esteem. There has been an enduring relationship between participants in the original training programme and MIT colleagues, consistent with the design cycle principle of design and build, test and refine, embed and transfer. Amy and colleagues continued to collaborate and learn about CCB. A commitment to global change does not have to be an impediment to academic recognition and skills and status. The highly regarded Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT, founded in 1861 as a private polytechnic-style institution, is positively experimental in its approach to teaching and learning. Amy's work with CCB is entirely consistent with MIT's values statement, which says, drawing strength from MIT's distinctive roots, we believe in learning by doing, and we blur the boundaries between disciplines as we seek to solve hard problems. Embracing the unconventional, we welcome quirkiness, nerdiness, creative irreverence and play. We accept the risk of failing as a rung on the ladder of growth. With fearless curiosity, we question our assumptions, look outward, and learn from others. The key features of CCB align closely with the strengths approach, in that it uses resources already available. It's founded on the need to trust the people who are worked with, to listen to them, and be brave enough to pursue the things that they themselves want to do. Everybody contributes. No one and nothing are ignored. It is self-generating and accumulative, increasing capacity for the future. And it doesn't limit people's aspirations. While we accept that not all institutions share these radical values in practice, our second example shows what can be possible within a more traditional context. At the University of Plymouth, a former polytechnic in southwest England, I've used my role as social work student placement organiser to bring together students with refugees newly dispersed to the city. 20 years later, the resulting NGO, Students and Refugees Together, START, has provided placements for more than 300 professionals, mainly social workers and occupational therapists, while enabling more than 2,000 refugees to access their rights and get on with their lives. The model of an organisation with the dual purpose of practice, education and support to refugees as they get leave to remain has attracted attention and awards, as you can see from the website, and enabled us to theorise a transferable model of a social justice placement. In 1999, a change in immigration law meant that people who had sought safety in the UK would be accommodated in a city where the minority ethnic population was 0.6% from the census in 2001. Indeed, the city had been described as a city of hate, and it was ill-prepared for providing interpreters or being sensitive to cultural difference. Whilst acknowledging the risks of the situation, I considered the resources at my disposal. Students in need of practical placements are often regarded as a burden on the professional community, and refugees are likewise referred to in terms of burden. Both can be regarded as potentially high contributors in transition, and if brought together, could mutually realise their potential. Working collectively with others, using the strengths approach, START illustrates the effectiveness of a social justice placement model, which could be applied in other circumstances and with other underserved groups. The first stage is to identify a group of people who do not access existing services, possibly because none are available, or because their experiences have taught them to be very cautious. In an increasingly market-driven service sector, where funding is attached to outcomes, people with complex needs are likely to find themselves passed from one agency to another, or to fall between services because they're not a good fit. Similarly, as services are designed to fix symptoms rather than address causes, preventative and long-term work tend to be sacrificed for fast results. No wonder that many people avoid state solutions that can be experienced as intrusive, inflexible, and even aggressive. Even as service providers seek to be trauma-informed, the consequences of austerity can lead to a re-traumatizing impact on people needing support. Students are in an ideal position to respond flexibly to people's needs and aspirations, while remaining compassionate, hopeful, and embedded in current reality. Their freshness contrasts with experienced professionals suffering moral injury as they are increasingly being required to deliver services in a way that compromises their integrity. Working with students can be a protective factor against burnout. In stage 2 of the social justice model, a practitioner who's familiar with and trusted by the group, in our example, a specialist teacher supporting refugee children into school, acts as a go-between or bridge of trust to explore whether there are needs expressed by the people themselves that students could meet. At this point, stage 3 on the diagram, care must be taken to define the scope of the work. Students who are keen to be helpful need to be supported to focus on early intervention, prevention, and supporting people to access their entitlements. They have the time to listen carefully and assess needs and aspirations holistically. At START, this has meant not signposting, but going with people to various appointments to ensure they understand what's happening and that they in turn are understood by the official. It means building sufficient trust to be told of issues and anxieties as they occur. Missing appointments or failure to respond to letters quickly enough could have serious consequences for people's right to remain, for example. It also meant arranging childcare so a single parent could attend an interview for a course. Existing services should not be duplicated, and students must not work beyond their competence or professional values. Such situations provide students with rich opportunities to explore and develop their professional identity, as in the occupational therapy role emerging placement model, particularly when working alongside students from other disciplines. Stages 4 and 5 are concerned with creating clear processes of accountability, rooted in the experience of the group worked with. At start, this has involved creating processes of record keeping and feedback that prioritise the service user voice and amplified student learning. Crucially, although students are not protected from people's immediate needs, there is constant help and support for them at hand. In common with the design cycle underpinning CCB, design and build, test and refine, embed and transfer, Stage 6 is the ongoing process of refining the prototype using everyone's feedback to ensure a professionally and pedagogically sound placement structure. Just as in CCB, each placement will be different, attuned to the local people and circumstances. The important test is whether it is fit for purpose. In the example shown here, the individual academics have used our position in the institution to combine academic practice with activism. In both cases, the professional practice, Amy as engineer and me as social worker, have informed the work in a way that's boundary spanning. In concert with MIT, we believe in learning by doing, and we blur the boundaries between disciplines as we seek to solve hard problems. Academia becomes a site for practice in a way that challenges research norms. Activism of this kind is more fluid than participatory action research, or even co-produced research with people with lived experience. Both examples prioritise collaboration over structured planning and have direct impact, in contrast to the once removed separation for research impact to be counted. Significantly, a funded research project can take years to be approved, and so is unlikely to be responsive to urgent need. The kind of academic activism we are referring to is exploratory, opportunistic, and sits uneasily within the traditional research industry. As teachers of future professionals, we know that students will learn at least as much from our practice as from our words, and so have prioritised engagement over production. So in conclusion, while both of these examples are rooted in values and knowledge frameworks, crucially they're practice-led. The research and scholarship are outcomes of the practice and take years to be articulated. We can use the strengths approach to guide action now and do what we can, where we are, with what we have. So our response to Gardner et al.'s challenge is, be brave. Do it now. The writing will come later. Thank you.